I've done a lot of presentations on technology and education over the years, and as a big fan of TED Talks, I felt some pressure to say something profound here tonight. And I sat down in my office to write something for this and realized very quickly, like, that wasn't going to happen, right? And but I'm okay with that, actually, because there's really a freedom in not having to get it exactly right. For me, it's all about floating ideas out there, promoting thought, the development and evolution of ideas in a social context, and this is certainly one. In part, I owe this humble insight to a mystic that I've followed for many years, and you might recognize him, maybe even follow him as well. Clearly, the world is full of great ideas, right? And you've heard a number of them here tonight. But equally important to those ideas are the questions they raise for you, how it challenges your thinking. And for me, that's the way I see that knowledge has evolved over the centuries. That is the evolution of thought. Consider this clip from MGM's film Love and Death with Diane Keaton and Woody Yogananda Allen here.
Isn't nature incredible?
To me, nature is, I don't know, spiders and bugs and then big fish eating little fish and plants eating plants and animals eating. It's like an enormous restaurant. That's the way I see it.
Yes, but if God created it, it has to be beautiful, even if his plan's not apparent to us at the moment.
Sonia, what if there is no God?
Boris Dmitrovich, are you joking?
What if we're just a bunch of absurd people who are running around with no rhyme or reason?
But if there is no God, then life has no meaning. Why go on living? Why not just commit suicide?
Well, let's not get hysterical. I could be wrong. I'd hate to blow my brains out and then read in the papers they found something.
So the moral of the story, right? Express yourself freely, explore the possibilities. Just don't always believe what you think. I mean, that's really Woody's whole message. And in an attempt to explore the possibilities, a friend of mine recently went to India, and she went there for about 6 weeks to immerse herself in yoga. I mean, I got to say, I was very impressed. 6 weeks in India to explore some new insights. And on the first day she was there, she tells me that the guru asked hundreds of practitioners to consider the following, and I'd like you to consider it as well. And that is, what is the one question that our bodies, our minds, our senses are really hungry to want to know the answer to? What is that one question that we desire, that we're hardwired to want to know? And of course, at the end of the stay, he circled back, the guru circled back and asked the practitioners what they thought. And maybe you've probably thought of them sitting there right now. Who am I? And does the universe exist without us? And, is there life after death? And, why am I here? When there was no more suggestions, he put forth what he thought was the answer. And that is, what happens next? What happens next? And when you think about it, it's really hard to argue with this. Because, in fact, anticipation cannot be overrated, right? And evolution rewards awareness. In fact, I would say that what happens next is evolution's mantra. To go you went on to say that the key to being in present time is to ease that desire, to overcome that inclination to want to know what happens next. I mean, for me, that's like impossible. I mean, I've always been a guy that just, has to know what's happening next. And for me, I just not been able to do that. And I know that the kind of real focus of Eastern practices is really to teach you to be here now, but I just have a tough time with that. In fact, this obsession, this never-ending desire that I have, has actually been leveraged by marketing companies, as we know. And one of them that's really leveraged it incredibly well is Apple. Apple's whole shtick really, is really to set up you to want to know what happens next. I'll go into any Apple store, and even if I just was at one yesterday, just to see what's coming, just to see what's next, right? I'm thinking from the number of people in those stores, I'm not the only one feeling this way, And I believe the ability to affect what happens is directly proportional to what knowledge we've accumulated. And how we apply that knowledge with critical, creative thinking is essential. Knowledge is cumulative. I mean, we all know that, right? And it's collected over thousands of years from many cultures from around the world. the results of various achievements in science and literature and math and arts. And this knowledge is the source code of who we become as a conscious species. And it fills the shelves of our libraries and our bookstores, at least the bookstores that are left. And for me, it's the most important legacy we can hand off to this next generation. Like storytellers of old and ancient cultures, I think we have an obligation and responsibility to communicate what we know and pass it on.
In July 1930, in the small town of Potsdam in upstate New York, Rabindranath Tagore visited Albert Einstein at Einstein's cottage. Tagore was an Eastern poet and philosopher, the first non-European Nobel laureate, and was said to have a mesmerizing, prophet-like aura. A New York Times reporter documented some of their conversation, a 3-day exchange between two brilliant minds greatly different in cultures and disciplines, but with a passion for seeking truth. Tagore believed the world does not exist without human consciousness. Einstein argued that truth is independent of human beings. The following is an excerpt. You have been busy hunting down with mathematics the two ancient entities, time and space, while I have been lecturing in this country on the eternal world of man, the universe of reality. There are two different conceptions about the nature of the universe: the world as a unity dependent on humanity, and the world as reality independent of the human factor. The world is a human world. The scientific view of it is also that of the scientific man. Therefore, the world apart from us does not exist. It is a relative world, depending for its reality upon our consciousness. Truth, then, or beauty, is not independent of man? No, I do not say so. I agree with this conception of beauty, but not with regard to truth. Why not? Truth is realized through men. I cannot prove my conception is right, but that is my religion, that truth is independent of human beings. These chairs and tables would still be here if we were not.
In this exchange we just saw between Einstein and Tagore, if we could convert this space into sort of a book club setting, I'm sure every one of you would have a very valuable perspective and would be able to share that perspective with the rest of us and advance all of our knowledge. Your background in education, your background in your philosophies, in your experiences in the world, your spiritual experiences, no matter what, you would bring a personal point of reference to that. And together we would have a collective understanding that would be different. We might not agree on everything, and certainly Einstein and Tagore did not agree, as you can tell, on everything. Their interaction was an attempt to evolve their understanding of the world. My current venture is a very exciting one. It's actually a cloud-based experience called StudySync. It's a blend of text and literature and science and history with the modeling of academic discourse, with dynamic visuals and peer-to-peer interaction, videos, much like this Einstein piece you saw, to engage kids, to facilitate the social learning aspect of building knowledge. When I was in graduate school, in the 90s, finishing my master's degree in literature and the teaching of writing, I was in a professor's office, and it looked much like this, clutter of books and craziness that professor's office often looked like. And I was sitting in this cluttered space, and I put my foot up on a crate. And this is true. And in this crate was a collection of education materials, like reel-to-reel tapes and pamphlets and games, manipulatives, just an amazing collection of stuff. And I said to the professor, like, whoa, what is this stuff right here? And he said, that is a small part, actually, of a program developed by James Moffet at Harvard called Interaction for Houghton Mifflin back in the 70s. And what I saw was multimedia, actually before there was multimedia. I contacted Moffet, and he invited me to meet with him up at his Mariposa Ranch, which was an honor. And Jim was bigger than life. I mean, like handsome and tall and rugged. I mean, like Clint Eastwood or something, like a movie star, with the suave of sort of Cary Grant, and intimidatingly brilliant. I mean, really amazing. Thankfully, he took a liking to me, and I actually convinced him to help me create a program that was built around CD-ROMs, an educational program that really used his pedagogy to teach kind of real-world writing and reading to actually middle school and grammar school kids. He was a little skeptical, especially about the CD-ROM thing, because CD-ROMs at that time weren't even in the schools, and he told me that. And I said, don't worry about that. Chill out. They're coming, right? And they were. They eventually, obviously, actually came and they went since now. There's a sort of a philosophy when you're producing for education and technology, which is to shoot ahead, like a skeet shooting, just kind of aim ahead of the target, anticipate that trajectory. It's the only way you're going to be there when everybody sort of catches up to you. And we did, and we created an amazing curriculum. It mirrored how professionals in the real world use writing and the real world experience and sort of thinking and collaborating and doing. We sold the company a few years later, successfully. But very sadly, Jim passed away in the interim. Very tragic. After that, I settled into life as a single dad here in Sonoma, bought a house. But as my kids got into high school, I grew concerned. I don't believe it's fair to project on today's kids. Honestly, I do not feel it's fair to project on them our experience with leather-bound books and that armchair experience of reading. It's a different world. It really is. And, it's challenging for them. It's finding the patience to read an entire novel, finding the relevance in those texts, getting a foothold on the author's underlying ideas. These are challenges even for the best students. And it's not entirely their fault they're having difficulty with this. I mean, it's the way the world works today, like it or not. In fact, it's exactly what we experience ourselves, right? I mean, I know my attention span has gone down. Information is flying at us, and we're expected to multitask at all times. So clearly, it's not only their fault. But the need to engage this generation in the ideas found in these books seems so important to me that I put aside the last revision of my book. I put aside other business ventures, and I took on solving this problem. So, I put the team back together, the EdVantage team, and I brought in some creative minds, and, I tossed a mound of clay on the table, which eventually became StudySync, and I said, let's sculpt it. And the challenge we faced in sculpting this together was, how do we engage kids? How do we inspire them to be the next generation of thinkers? How do we entertain kids as they learn? How do we keep their attention? And then really, how do we convince them that it's really cool to be smart? And that to be smart, you have to accumulate knowledge. That there's no alternative for that, right? And I believe right now, we are at what happens next in education. A technology event horizon, so to speak. A place where the black hole of old ways is really fighting to suck us down and keep us from advancing to that future. We need to be open to all the possibilities, old and new. This is so important. We seem somehow to be stuck, in my opinion, for the most part anyway, teaching our kids like it's the 19th century. I mean, how can that be, really? I mean, we can't expect to capture their imaginations if we haven't captured our own. That's it. We need to be the ones that are creative in creating these opportunities and embracing what's relevant to them, leveraging what they feel is important, to encourage them to look at these great ideas. Because the plain truth is, what matters are the words. What matters is the ideas and the questions that come from those ideas when you know those ideas. What we need to do is be inspired ourselves. We must use our imaginations to help foster the evolution of education. That's so critical to the advancement of our culture. What happens next is really up to us. Thank you.